Most cameras nowadays are pretty easy to use, especially the ones in cell phones or consumer level cameras. There's not a ton that you have to do other than to hit the red button to record and hit it again to stop. Now on the technical side, real quick, a lot of phones and cameras nowadays they can shoot in 4K, which is a really high resolution. It's over 2,000 horizontal lines, and some TVs and monitors can play back 4K, but most can't. And your videos probably won't get played back in anything near 4K. If you can just turn that feature off and shoot in high definition, which has 1,080 lines of resolution, you'll be doing yourself a favor. I mentioned earlier that video files, they're huge, and the more resolution, the more horizontal lines, the larger those files get. Your computer, unless it's pretty great, it's probably going to choke trying to edit 4K video files. It's just not worth it. There should be a setting in your phone or camera for resolution. Sometimes it might just be called size or picture size, something like that. Set it to HD or 1080. But on to the making stuff look good side. There are a lot of things you can do that make what you're filming look better, most of which are just some basic rules of photography. We're going to hit a few of the big ones. First up is framing. When you buy a piece of art, you put it in a frame because hanging it on your wall, the frame makes it look better, right? It just presents the picture by packaging it. You can also have framing within your image, like in these shots from the 40-year-old virgin. See how the two characters are framed by the opening in the wall behind them? And the girl is surrounded by the door frame. The framing, it's not perfectly around them. It's not always on all sides of them, especially as they move around, but it just makes a nice frame around them. It makes the shot look composed. Here are some examples from other interviews, so you can see how else you can apply this. You might also notice you try to keep the space right behind their head fairly empty so that they stand out against the background. That makes them and the framing look even stronger. The rule of thirds. You may be familiar with this. It's the idea of dividing the screen into thirds, basically a tic-tac-toe board, and putting important things on those third lines. Usually that most important thing is people's eyes. You'll notice it in this shot. My eyes are on that top third line. Well, here from the show Arrested Development, watch the camera's constantly moving to keep the characters in those third lines because the characters keep moving. That just makes the shots look more composed. The camera's working so hard to keep that shot by using the rule of thirds. You might also notice they use the door and other background elements as framing in shots when they can. In interviews, again, almost always the eyes are the main focus and they're right on that third line. Occasionally they're in the horizontal center, like in my shot now, but more often it's on the intersection with one of the vertical third lines. Finally, I want to talk about the difference between a wide shot and a close-up. Here's an example of a wide shot, and here's a close-up. The difference should be fairly obvious, right? Well, in interviews, you usually want to aim for a closer shot. You'll notice in most of the examples we've used so far, they're close-ups. The major difference between those two shots, between the obvious of what you see, is the emotional impact of each shot. In a close-up, you can see someone's eyes better. And that lets you read and then feel their emotions better. I usually aim to get a shot that lets us see just below someone's shoulders. And if I'm interviewing by myself, I may, just for safety, make it a little bit wider so that they'll still be in the shot as they move around, and I'll also check the camera every time they move. But I still aim for as close a shot as I feel safe with. Again, it all goes back to the eyes. The more intimate I want the interview to feel, the closer of a shot I'll make it. Two quick side notes that might make things go a little more smoothly for you. If you're doing a longer interview, it's not a bad idea to stop the camera and restart it every 15 minutes or so. It gives the camera a chance to stop down, might keep any malfunctions or errors from happening. Some cameras will automatically stop down at maybe 15, 20 minutes too, so it helps for that. If I'm worried about remembering, I'll jot the time down that we start recording in my notes as a reminder so that I don't have to remember how long we've been recording. Second, always be super careful to make sure that the camera is actually recording. That may seem silly, but there are so many instances of people that finish shooting only to realize they hadn't started the camera. The feeling when you hit that record button, thinking that you're stopping the recording only to see the recording begin, it's not a fun one. Most cameras, they'll show you a timer when you hit record so that I always look for those numbers to start counting to verify that I'm recording. That's basically it. Of course, you can go so much deeper into composing camera shots, but if you just keep those couple of rules in mind, framing, rule of thirds, getting close, your shots are gonna look good.